This is Hammond.
And Jessica.
And you're listening to the Friendly Atheist Podcast. Please go to patreon.com/Friendly Atheist Podcast. If you like what you're listening to, give us all the stars and ratings and whatnot. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm all right. Holidays, kind of, sort of.
How are you, Jessica? I'm doing
How
really
are
well.
you,
Thank
Jessica?
you, Hammond. I'm officially done. My office closes between Christmas and New Year, so I am off for like 10 days.
Look at you.
Which is very exciting. Daddy just wants to be her friend. I don't know why you don't want to be her friend.
Daddy's like all up in my face.
She loves you so much.
It is not reciprocated.
Well, I'm thinking about it because I'll probably forget later. I'm going to be in LA in early January. So if you want to come meet me, I'm going to be hanging out and getting a drink. I'm getting, like, the closer it gets, the more I'm like, who's going to come to this dumb thing? But I'm going to be at ETA, which is a bar in Highland Park, at 6:30 p.m. I want to be somebody specified, hey, Daddy, you don't actually need to do that. It is going to be in the PM. It is a bar on January 8th, which is a Tuesday. And Hammond, tell them about the present I got you.
We now are the proud owners of new mic covers after like 4 years of the old ones.
Yeah, they're just like...
They smell very nice.
Yeah, they're
not ripped apart.
The first set has seen better days. I'm not gonna blame Dottie, but one of them does have a medium-sized hole ripped in it. It's hard to say how that happened, but not all. They were...
It's delightful to speak into these.
I know. Do we sound better?
Probably not.
Are my plosives popping?
All
okay.
Right. Do you want to talk about what's going on in our home state?
Ooh.
Let's do this. Okay.
Oh,
here's the story.
Yeah.
The Catholic Church, Pennsylvania, months ago, grand jury released this report. It implicated hundreds of priests who were incredibly accused of abusing children, raping them, molesting them. And it implicated mentioned more than like 1,000 victims.
Right.
So since then, a bunch of attorneys general have been like, all right, well, in our state, we're also going to be investigating the Catholic Church. In response, a bunch of Catholic churches have been like, you know what? We're going to go ahead and be transparent and tell you who's been accused before you announce it, because it's better coming from us, right? For the sake of the church, saying like, look.
Hey, Hammond, is it better?
I mean, it shouldn't be. Like, the fact that you have to tell us all the people who have been accused of molesting kids, that ought to be freaky. But in terms of that end of the creepy, awful spectrum, it's a little better when you're the one admitting it rather than the attorneys general saying, here's what they did. Okay, so in Illinois, we have that situation. We have an attorney general who's like, I'm coming after the churches. Go her.
Yeah.
By the way, Lisa Madigan decided not to run again, the attorney general. So she's about to end her 4th term in office as a Democrat. But her replacement, the guy who just won the election, is also a Democrat, Kwame Raoul. He's going to pick up where she left off. So good. We got the government on this thing.
When I was canvassing, a lot of people talked about how much they hated Lisa Madigan.
They hate her father because he runs Illinois government.
Oh, I see.
Like House majority, sort of.
Oh, so when they said I hate Madigan, maybe they weren't talking about Lisa Madigan?
Less so her. She hasn't really been in the line of fire, but she's his daughter, so whatever. She's been fine in terms of attorney general
tapped
things.
into Illinois
It's all
politics.
good. But anyway, she said that she was prematurely, because they're still investigating, but right now they have a preliminary report on some of the investigation. And basically, let me tell you this, the Catholic Church has 6 of, I think, the 8 archdioceses in Illinois have been quote-unquote transparent about the priests that have been accused. Okay. And they have publicly identified 185 members of the clergy who the church says have been credibly accused of doing something awful.
Zoinks.
Well, this week, Madigan's report came out and said 2 things. First of all, they said, when we heard about the Pennsylvania thing, we set up a hotline saying, call us if you have been a victim so that we can investigate your claims. And they took notes, and they're still investigating. What she announced is that the list of alleged abusers, not credibly accused, because they're still figuring out which ones are credible, but the list of accused priests is 690. Not 185 that the church said were credibly accused.
500.
690. 500 more than the church mentioned. So all these headlines say, like, there were 500 plus priests who gone on that list publicly, that the church says, no, we got their names on our list too. And that's assuming that the 185 the church mentioned were already on the list. Otherwise, we're talking about more people. And again, if the best case scenario for the Catholic Church is that this additional 505 people on the list, they're all not credibly accused, or that maybe they're all dead, so the church decided not to include them on their list.
Oh, I see.
Maybe that's why. But, like, you're telling me all 505 of these people are not credibly accused and they're still living? You're like, we're assuming that a good faith response would have been the church wanted to include these people, but they had reasons not to. Not that they just either weren't aware of it or they never investigated these people. And who knows how many of the 690 are still working today in their parishes. So, first of all, go Illinois government for getting that out there, because if that leads to more people leaving the church, good. And by the way, one of the things Madigan said in her report, which is, I'm glad she said it, is the preliminary stages of this investigation have already demonstrated that the Catholic Church cannot police itself.
Europe.
Totally right. I hope they follow through on this. I'm sure they will. And look into all of these crimes and find out which of these people did what and expose that, if nothing else, so people have that information, but also take action against any priests who are still working today, if that's the case. So Dottie's pissed off about it.
She's trying to bury a bone in the suitcase where we keep our recording equipment.
Yeah,
so I'm trying
Dottie totally ruined those mic covers.
It was only the one.
By the way, Cardinal Braze Kupik, I forgot the pronunciation, who is the cardinal, head of the Archdiocese of Chicago, basically said, no, we totally reported all the allegations to the civil authorities. We're hiding nothing. And the Diocese of Joliet said, we had no warning that our reporting was incomplete. Well, I mean, here's what we don't know. Of the different archdioceses in Illinois, we don't know where these 690 are coming from. She didn't list the names. She just kind of said, this is the total number. We don't know if they're coming from a part of the state, which parts of the state they're coming from. We don't know if one archdiocese is worse than all the rest. We don't know that yet. So, but it's a damning thing for them for the church's list to be so different from the government's list is disturbing.
Yeah, that's not great. So as you were talking, I was trying to figure out how many total Catholic priests there are in Illinois, just so we could do
what's the percentage we're talking here?
And first of all,
while you were looking for that, I should point out that one of the responses from the Catholic League, which is Bill Donahue, the guy who kind of lives in a basement and just types out angry rants on behalf of the Catholic Church, even though he's not a part of it, officially some sort of leader in there. He's always like, well, I read a story this week about a public school teacher who did something wrong. Therefore, the schools are worse than the Catholic Church. Therefore, stop being mad at the church.
Yeah.
It's like, first of all, the schools have a system to handle these things.
So I was looking up how many actual Catholic priests there are in Illinois.
Do we have a number?
The thing is, okay, first of all, their SEO is kind of fucked with this new with this new
So when you
thing.
look up priests in Illinois, it's all abuse.
Yeah. And I can't find any Illinois stats from a cursory look.
Keep in mind, though, that the 690 that's listed by the Attorney General's office, we don't know if these are active priests. They could be ones who molested somebody decades ago and they heard about it. They could be dead now. They could be out of the church a long time ago.
Right.
So even if we had an accurate count of how many priests there are, it doesn't tell us necessarily much until we know who we're talking about here, which means they just got to continue the investigation.
Yeah, that number really, and I mean, it's alarmingly high, obviously, but it doesn't tell us much without any context.
Right.
So I think the more important number is going to be how many victims step forward and how many have been credibly accused and are still active.
Yep.
I think those are
And that's what they did in Pennsylvania. That was
Right.
so damning, where they didn't say the victims' names,
Right.
though a grand jury heard them. They said the priests' names, and here's everything they've been accused of, and here's how the church responded. Like, that's what made it so appalling. It's
Right.
like, we know how the church handled these people.
Yeah, and
or
I think
didn't.
Obviously, it's a big problem in the Catholic Church, and yes, the problem is with individuals. But the larger, in any large group of people, you're going to find bad apples, right?
Right. This is the whole friggin' orchard.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is it's not just one or two bad actors; it's many bad actors, and it's not like the Catholic Church, the powers that be, saw it and took care of it. Their cover up, I would argue, is as bad or worse than the individual crimes. Yeah. So
yay,
cool.
Illinois.
It's hard to say I'm glad because obviously this is sad, but it's good that this is coming to light.
Yeah.
This is important work. This is important work to be done.
I agree. So while we're on the subject of behaving badly, not abuse, but last year, I think, not last year, earlier this year, we learned about something called Project Blitz, which was like the Christian Right's new playbook for how they were going to get Christian legislation through government.
Hold on, just
Blitz.
Just quick pause.
Yes.
Really, they went with Blitz?
Blitz.
They didn't.
Which has no horrible connotations whatsoever.
No historical connotations.
None. The reason they called it
Holy
Blitz.
shit! Are you kidding? Did I react like this the first time you told me?
Probably. The reason they called it that is they're like, we're just going to throw a whole bunch of legislation.
I understand what a blitz is.
No. They called it that because they were like, we're just going to swamp every state legislature with these bills. They can't stop them all, right? So,
Sure.
okay, that's where it's coming from.
Cool, guys.
Yeah. And here were the three types of bills that they really focused on when this became public knowledge this past May. They said there were symbolic ones, like getting In God We Trust everywhere, like in public schools, in courthouses. Just get the phrase In God We Trust up. And they did that in a lot of places. They also said they wanted to pass pro-Christian bills, such as resolutions that say it's Christian Heritage Week or like the Day of the Bible, whatever. It's like, all right, like
Cool, guys.
all right. And then they had the anti-everybody else bills that says, Christian business owners should be able to discriminate against gay customers, things like that. Okay.
The important issues
The important
that this country
issues.
is facing.
This is what Christians are focused on.
Yeah.
So it turns out we now have a copy of Project Blitz 2019. And this is coming from
I
Frederick.
cannot get over that name.
Frederick Clarkson, writing for Religion Dispatches. He had the whole update on what the 29 edition of this playbook, because it really is a playbook, because it's very military, football-esque. Like, they have a playbook.
Warlike. Would you say it's like a lightning war?
Like a blitz
Would you
in
say
a
that?
war. I would say that. It was 116 pages. Now it's 148.
Cool.
And here's what they're focusing
That's what they
on.
always say. When you're done with your second draft, make sure it's much longer than your first draft.
Here's what so they had three specific goals they mentioned. Number one, free speech policies, because they want legislation.
Fuck that noise. I hate free speech.
They
Is that
want
what they're saying?
legislation that says public schools can't get in the way of students who want to pray.
They can't already.
Yeah, you're right. They don't do that. They can't do that. If students want to pray, like before a football game, they can. No one's stopping them. Like, atheist groups are not getting in the way of students who want to pray. The problem is when coaches and teachers and administrators are taking part in it or leading it or anything like that. Okay,
Right.
so the first one's silly.
Stupid.
The next one, stupid. The next one is making sure In God We Trust license plates are available in every state. All right, glad to see there.
By
the way, kids are
fucking
dying at the
dumb.
border, but this is what these Christians care
God,
about.
fucking Flint doesn't have clean water.
The
Maybe-
last one is they want resolutions, quote, favoring sexual intercourse only between a man and a woman.
What does that even mean? A resolution favoring sexual intercourse?
Unquote. Yeah. Favoring sexual intercourse only between, not like...
What does that mean? Does that
we
mean
want
like
it,
if
they say it as a public health hazard for gay people to have sex?
No.
So they want the state to say, hey, sex should only occur between biological men and women because apparently if you don't have missionary style sex, it's going to hurt you and therefore hurt the public. And they need this codified in the government.
that is wild.
They also said, like, look, we're not saying don't have marriage equality because the Supreme Court ruled on that.
But they defo can't have sex.
But yeah, it's a public health hazard. We spend a lot of money on HIV and AIDS, they said.
Really not that much, though.
I'm reading from the playbook.
Okay, here's my question.
By the way, don't say you're for public health when you oppose the Affordable Care Act and all that. These are the same people.
I'm really going to be stuck on this preferred hetero sex. What does that mean? Like prefer? Because prefer, you said, is the word.
Favoring.
I'm so sorry, Hammond. Now it makes complete. So does that mean if two dudes have sex, they just have to like know in the back of their head, like the government isn't crazy about this?
That's
like,
exactly right. They want you to feel bad.
It's not illegal, and nobody's gonna. I'm not gonna get in trouble. But like, the government isn't wild about this.
Yeah, like the governor's looking through his window and shaking his head at you. Just FYI.
Just with a single tear
yes.
streaming down his face.
Uh-huh.
What the okay, really, really and truly, what do they think that is going to do?
Well, a couple things. One thing is it'll send the message from the government that if you're gay or lesbian or engaging in those acts, there's something wrong with you. Like, they want the world to believe gay people are diseased and dysfunctional. This is what Clarkson mentioned. That's the conclusion they want people to draw. And by the way, they then use that argument to say gay people shouldn't be allowed to adopt from, like, Christian-run facilities, even though they get federal money, or foster care agencies, even though they get federal money, because they want people to think that LGBTQ people are a threat to kids.
Okay, which is... Yes, they do think that, and they do believe all those dumb things. But what does straight sex being favor? Like, it's so toothless.
And by the way,
it's so toothless even in its language.
Yeah, it's not a law. It's just saying we don't like it. But
does anything else exist in that sort of...
What I don't get is
like we're codifying morals or something?
That's what they want to do.
Or mores, I guess.
What I don't get is they seem to act like all straight sex is all missionary all the time, too.
It isn't?
Apparently not. I know. Blowing your mind here.
What kind of wild world are people living in?
Yeah, they seem to think that if straight people have sex, it's always... within marriage... It's always okay, and it's never anything not missionary.
But is it always just, like, do they assume all sex is for procreation? Is that what the underlying...
I believe the correct way to answer this from their perspective is it should have the possibility of procreation.
So okay. The problem is I really do want to at least... understand where they're coming from, even if I don't agree with it. But this is just so like it's self-parody. You know what I mean? Like it's
that accurately describes them. Can you imagine if Muslims released a similar playbook on what they're going to do in state legislatures?
Every mosque in the country would be protested. People would lose their fucking mind. And you know what? I think we should be losing our fucking mind about this. Like, what are you guys doing?
This is what Clarkson said in his article. I mean, just so we're clear on, this is not all frivolous. Project Blitz
Are you sure it's not all frivolous, Hammett?
The Project Blitz is the religious rights playbook for all state legislatures for years to come. And this is what they're basing their push... Like, we always hear about, oh, look, random group of people tried to get in God We Trust in City Hall and put up a sign that says that, or a public school says that, or this legislator passed a bill or proposed a bill saying we should have this sign in every school. It's all coming from this playbook for all statewide legislature.
Here's my question.
Yeah.
So we're starting to ramp up for 2020 elections, right?
Sure we are.
So say I don't know who's a friend, an Elizabeth Warren, a Beto, or a Joe Biden brings this up on a debate stage. What do you think the response would be like from a Republican? Or like, do you think this would be like, hey, Christians, like, hey, right winger, like Okay, hey left,
think
look what the
some
right is actually
Republicans-
doing. I threw my pen, I'm so
Nice
upset.
job. I think a lot of Republicans would say these are state issues and I'm going to let states handle them and debate them as they see fit. I'm focused on federal issues, so it wouldn't come
Yeah,
up
I
in a
guess you're right.
presidential debate.
I'm just wondering, like,
anything like
what's
that.
the biggest platform this can get? Because it's pretty...
Well, what's insidious about it is that statewide legislation doesn't get a lot of publicity.
It
doesn't
doesn't.
get a lot of press. A lot of this stuff happens under the radar, and a lot of the stuff they're pushing, they're like, they know if they tried to pass some of these as laws, you could file a lawsuit over it would get overturned, etc. So they're pushing for resolutions, and they're pushing for relatively innocuous things, but it has a broader effect
Sure.
of saying the government prefers Christians and straight people and cis people, and that's what they really want to get at. It's this underlying morality that they're trying to pass, even if they're losing at the Supreme Court, maybe not for long, and things
Doesn't
like that.
that just reek of, like, Nazi propaganda of we prefer tall blonde people, we prefer...
They will be
like,
I think they will tell you, we're not saying this isn't racist, this isn't sexist, or anything like that. We're saying this is God's will.
homophobic.
Definitely homophobic, because that's what Jesus wanted.
Famously.
Yeah. And that's their argument, that it's propaganda, but we're just pushing biblical morality, and it's good morality for everybody. And if gay people don't like it, well, then they can, I guess, turn straight or something. Or just be celibate for life and save the public health.
Doesn't it feel a little bit like shoveling during a blizzard? Like, they're so far out of their depth in the culture of 2018. And, like, yes, maybe there is still...
But they're not out of their depth in those state legislatures, especially a lot of them that are overrun with Republicans. And again, resolutions, very rarely have I seen, like, resolutions like this totally die. Some of them, if they're explicitly crazy, maybe. But like the ones that are like Christian Heritage Week, those come and go all the time. It's the day of the Bible, week of the Bible, year of the Bible. I've seen those come and go. And they just kind of get signed because what are you going to do with it? It's one of those things that whoever requested it makes a big deal out of it. Same thing with Day of Reason,
Sure.
Darwin Day resolutions. They're nice, but it doesn't mean anything
Right.
other than you went through the motions and got the governor to sign this thing that means something to you and literally nobody else. They're nice. But again, when you have this happening all over the country and you have
in
it
an
happen,
organized and orchestrated fashion, not...
it sends
one-offs.
a message that if you're not one of us, you should be looked down upon, you're doing something wrong. And again, once that is the basis in the culture, it becomes a lot harder to pass laws and get people on your side to overturn discrimination.
I don't know.
You know, when you
This
see it.
feels very death rattly to me. This feels like the last spasms of... and not to say they won't be successful to some extent, and they won't... there won't be consequences to this sort of behavior. I'm not saying that. It just feels like a last-ditch effort to because they're dying, you know, like literally and figuratively. The Christian right is dying.
I wish I could tell you, I wish I could say I agree with you. I don't know that they are, I know the demographics are going in one direction, but the elected official demographic is not all going in that direction.
Right, but I'm
there
saying...
are still a hell of a lot of these people running the country.
But I think
and
it's
the
a
states.
matter of time before those people, frankly, fucking die off and
but
let
it's a
us
long
live
time
in
away.
It's long in terms of our lifetime. It's not long in terms of the future of
Right.
the United States.
I would say, look,
assuming we get there.
how do you fight back against this? You got to be aware of what your state is doing, who the legislators are promoting this stuff. Keep an eye on state bills that are being considered and push back against it. Because most of the time, I mean, if you ask me right now what bills are being considered in Illinois, I haven't looked. I don't know. I don't know what has been pre-filed already before the next legislature steps in. But it's already happening. People are pre-filing bills left and right in every state. So it's a matter of being vigilant about that. And once this stuff is being considered, raise hell about it.
Right.
But again, why is it Project Blitz? If they do this everywhere and they do it all the time, you're not going to catch everything. Some of it will get through.
Name, though. Like, the name by itself should be just a symbol of how fucking out of step these people are. Like,
Yep.
you're calling a culture push Blitz. Are you fucking kidding me? Have you read a history book? Have you heard of history?
Well, clearly they don't care. I mean, again, they're doing the same thing to gay people now that they did to black people at one time recently.
Right.
And they're like, well, we're not racist anymore, not explicitly so, therefore we're better. It's like, you're the same we just talked about this last week with that looking back at our racist history for Southern Baptists. They acknowledge we were racist. It was wrong. But it's like, you're using the same kind of bigotry now. You haven't learned a damn thing.
Right.
So, no, they haven't learned anything. It's the same stuff. Here's another one. I know you want to talk about this too. There was a young man who died of suicide relatively recently. And earlier this month, they held a funeral. The child's... the parents are Jeff Hulabarger. His wife is Linda Hulabarger. Their teenage son died of suicide. And the story is, and their son is named Mason. Great student, great athlete. I don't know why he took his own life. I don't think we ever know in some cases why they did it, but he did. And at his funeral, a Catholic priest, Don LaQuesta, was speaking at the funeral. It was held at a church, I believe. And this priest spent a lot of time talking about how he's probably not going to heaven because he died of suicide, and God doesn't like suicide, and therefore this kid may end up in hell. And I don't know if he repented in the eyes of God. And I'm quoting from an article about it. He basically called our son a sinner. And the parents are looking at each other. What is he doing? We didn't ask for this. And they eventually had to tell him to stop.
No, apparently the father, after the first few times he said the word suicide, I approached the pulpit and told him, I whispered in his ear, Father, please stop. It didn't work. He didn't miss a beat. He kept going. He said that word another handful of times. It made the worst day of our lives much worse.
Yeah.
I've got some quotes from LaQuesta. God can forgive even the taking of one's own life. In fact, God awaits us with his mercy with ever open arms. Yes, because of his mercy, God can forgive suicide and heal what has been broken. We must not call what is bad good, what is wrong right. Because we are Christians, we must say what we know is the truth, that taking your own life is against God who made us and is against everyone who loves us. Our lives are not our own. They're not ours to do with as we please. God gave us life. We are to be good stewards of that gift for as long as God permits. Like, that's...
It's not so veiled, just your son did something awful, you bad parents.
The finality of suicide makes this all worse. Now you have to work through this pain by yourselves or with those close to you now who will need to lean on you even as you lean on them. Like, it's awful. It is really fucking rough stuff.
Another priest who is not related to that guy basically called this homily a, quote, pastoral disaster. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, they removed this guy from doing funerals for the time being, at least.
For the foreseeable future, he won't be preaching at funerals, and, quote, he will have all other homilies reviewed by a priest mentor. He's agreed to pursue assistance that he needs in order to become a more effective minister in these difficult situations.
But seriously, this is one of those things they tell you in like medical school too, which is like, you can't teach someone good bedside manner. If you're not a good person or you're not a people person, you're not going to get better at it. You just got to learn to like stop being a dick when you're talking to people.
It's rough.
And it's the same thing. Like, I don't know what training this guy is going to do if he's going in thinking, well, it's suicide. I know what I have to say about that. Let me offer a different perspective on this, which is, what else should he have said? Because according to the Catechism of the Catholic Church, this is their rule book that the priests abide by. Here's what it says. In terms of life, we are stewards, not owners, of the life God has entrusted to us. It is not ours to dispose of.
I just read that. I feel like you don't listen to me when I talk.
Well, I'm sorry. That came from the Catechism. That wasn't what the guy was saying, though. He didn't read that.
No, this is what it says. He also said we must not call ours bad, good, blah, blah, blah. Our lives are not our own. They're not ours to do with as we please. God gave us
He's quoting the Catechism of the Catholic Church. Other things it says in the Catechism, suicide is contrary to love for the living God. blah, blah, blah. And by the way, as this is what the Catechism also says, if you have a psychological disturbance, anguish, suffering, torture, whatever, if there's something leading you to suicide, they kind of give you an out here. The church says those things can diminish the responsibility of the one committing suicide. It doesn't say if you're suffering from mental illness, like, we're not going to be mad at you about the suicide. It says, we'll lessen the blow, but you're still kind of responsible. Like, they add insult to injury by saying, I don't care what's going on in your life or what's wrong with what illness you're suffering.
Right.
You're still kind of to blame, and God doesn't like you if you do this.
As much.
So here's the question. This is what the church teaches. We can totally criticize what the church teaches, but people are getting mad at the priest as if he was wrong to read the Catholic Church rule book. And I don't know that the priest is the problem here. The problem is the church. The priest is just telling you what the church teaches. Like, yeah, he didn't have to be a dick about it. But again, he's just like, I'm reading the rule book, and everyone's getting mad at him for telling us what the church teaches.
Yeah, but okay.
So who's to blame here?
Okay, listen. I feel like you're trying to bait me with this.
I have no other bait here. I don't know where I'm going with this. That's the end of the line for me.
Because okay, if I died in a car accident and I wasn't wearing my seatbelt,
yeah,
the law says I should have been wearing my seatbelt, but nobody's gonna stand up at like my funeral and be like, well, I don't know what she expected. She was not wearing a seatbelt. Like, we all know, you wouldn't turn it into
I wouldn't go to the law because, again, but if you're in a church and in like a government, it's not like you're inviting the government official who wrote the law to speak at your funeral.
Fine. My mom always told me not to run in public, or not to jog in public where people could murder me. Hypothetically, she did not say that.
But if you got murdered,
if I got murdered, she would not stand up there and be like, "It is a Blumke family tradition not to run in public. We run in gyms where it's safe." She wouldn't say that, even if it was 100% my fault. Even if I was running around I don't know what's an example of a thing that would get me murdered, but even if I was literally asking for it, my mom wouldn't stand up at my funeral and be like, well, I fucking told her.
See, I feel like my parents would totally do that.
Okay.
For me.
Okay, maybe we need to talk about your family.
We could talk about it. They would totally get in one last I told you so.
And I've been to a Catholic funeral where my friend who died of suicide, and they did not do this even the tiniest bit. It was
because they chose not to look at Catholic teaching.
Not to.
They chose to ignore the teaching and just focus on something else.
No. To say they ignored Catholic teaching, I think, is overstating it, because if you're at a funeral and you don't read every single piece of Christian scripture, you're not ignoring Christian teaching, are you?
No, you're not ignoring it if you're not mentioning it.
Right?
I don't know if it's right.
No, it's right. You need to give this to me. No. I think ignoring it was way overstating.
I think it's entirely possible to be a Catholic priest and give a eulogy that focuses on his life while still in the back of your head thinking whatever it is you're thinking.
Maybe they were thinking that. You don't need to say everything you think out loud.
That's right. And this guy chose to keep the silent part out loud.
Exactly.
To say that stuff out loud. Yes, that's the mistake this guy made. But underlying all of this, the reason he thinks these horrible things is because it's what the church teaches. Of
course, and you're not wrong about that.
If you're a Catholic, you're signing on to this shit.
No, I know, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I keep throwing my pen. I'm not saying you're wrong about that. I just think you're being kind of willfully obtuse about what it means to be a priest. And being a priest isn't standing in front of your pulpit and just reading everything straight out of the Bible. It's about crafting a message. And whether or not I agree with that is notwithstanding. The point is,
fair point. And again, every Catholic priest who they quoted in any article about this made it very clear, if I were in that position, I would have talked about the good he contributed to the world.
Yeah.
Obviously, the stuff you expect them to say. This guy said something awful. Let's say the timing was off. Let's set aside the funeral and stuff. I still think the reason he said all this stuff is because it's what the church says about suicide.
And you're right. That's exactly what the church says.
Yeah.
But
so be mad at the church too,
yes.
and be mad at the priest for being a dick about it.
I have plenty of space in my heart to be angry at everyone. Don't worry.
Thank you. Let me move on to a different thing. This is back in Illinois. So here's the story that I remember covering back in May. There was a student in West Prairie High School. I don't even know where it is. Not part of the Chicago area or
West Prairie
suburbs.
High School. That sounds like it's around here.
But anyway, this kid was a valedictorian in May. He was giving the valedictorian speech at his public high school's graduation. And the speech he wanted to give, because he had to turn in a draft to his administrators days before the graduation, included a whole passage basically telling everyone to accept Jesus into their lives.
Cool. Really good timing.
Very good timing. I mean, he has a captive audience, so why not preach to them? The school said you need to remove those references. And to the kid's credit, his name is Sam Blackledge. To his credit, he didn't say the Jesus stuff. He listened to his administrators. He said the rest of the speech.
Oh, this is like Western Illinois, like Macomb.
Like okay, so really far west side of Illinois. So he didn't deliver the sermon, but okay, fine. After all of that went down...
Did you call it a sermon on purpose, or did you mean to call it a speech?
Speech/sermon.
Okay.
But after all this went down, there's a conservative legal group called First Liberty Institute. They're kind of the opposite of FFRF, except, they get everything wrong.
That's what
they basically told the school, you need to change your policy because you basically censored this kid illegally. It wasn't illegal. The school did exactly what they were supposed to do. Here's the problem. This week, the school basically announced that they have a new policy here. I'm going to read you what it says. The policy states, students who speak at school assemblies or ceremonies or graduations are responsible for the content and delivery of their speeches. It also states, building principals cannot prohibit or delete portions of a student's speech unless it affects school operations or the rights of other students or is obscene, infringes on copyrights, promotes drug use or other illegal activity, which is a long way of saying if this guy wanted to preach about Jesus, you as the principal cannot stop him from preaching about Jesus. But then here's something about graduation speeches. If the policy said, you know what, they don't have to submit the speech ahead of time, the students just get to talk. And if you let valedictorians or a class president or whatever talk, and you're not looking at their speeches, then, okay, the school is not responsible for what the kid says.
And realistically, once he's up there...
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
And that's true. And that's how some districts have gotten around this, where they're like, you know what? We're just not going to vet your speech anymore. So if you end up leading the whole graduation in prayer, that's on you. That's not on us. And no one can sue us about it.
Right.
And that's a way they've gotten around the issue. And in some very religious communities, that's probably the strategic thing to do, to say, well, we don't vet speeches, so if they include a prayer, what do you want us to do about it? And they're kind of right. We can't do anything about it. The problem is, some kids are going to take advantage of that.
Right.
Because what happens when you get a kid who's not a Christian, who leads the crowd in prayer?
Right.
Or an atheist who wants to say something that might be controversial or something. Okay, so here's the thing. They added to the policy, though. They didn't just say, we're not going to vet the speeches. They said... student speakers must submit a draft at least 2 school days before the speech is delivered. The principal can make editorial suggestions, which to me makes the whole problem worse, because they're saying, hey, administrators,
signing off on it.
You're going to get a copy of this 48 hours in advance, but if it includes the preaching, you can't stop it. Which is a way of saying, hey, it's not just the kid who's responsible for praying. Now the administrator, therefore the entire district, is on the hook for saying they sanctioned a sermon at graduation. Sure. To me, this opens them up to a lawsuit. It doesn't prevent one.
Right.
And the policy they had in the past, where the kid submitted the speech and the school said, you can't say these things, and then the kid didn't say it, that's the right way to handle it. They were right before, but then this conservative group got involved, and now they're open up to a lawsuit.
Interesting.
So it's stupid. I ran that by an FFRF, Freedom from Religion Foundation attorney. I'm like, am I right? Is that the right assessment here? And he basically said, yeah, that's pretty much what's going to happen. And he said that the strategy this school board adopted is, quote, remarkably short-sighted.
Yeah.
Which is totally right. I think they've solved their problem. But honestly, if the same situation happens again, now they could get sued for it. Because now you're allowing a sermon to go on.
And the interesting thing is, like, for me, in my understanding of, like, how laws surrounding separation of church and state work, if a kid's valedictorian and he wants to get up there and, like, talk about Jesus, that's his or her right.
He could have done it
right
if their policy said we're not vetting your speech ahead of time.
The same way if I wanted to talk about my atheism or somebody wanted to talk about their Muslim, like that, fine. Like you're a student, you're not speaking on behalf of the staff of your school, nor like you're speaking on behalf of yourself, and I think that's clearly understood.
Yeah,
right.
And one of the attorneys for First
Liberty, or is he
Liberty,
speaking on behalf of the student body, and that makes it tricky?
Well, he was speaking on behalf of himself, but if the school has a copy of his speech, now it's the school on the hook 242. The First Liberty attorney actually said, in support of the new policy, when students are given control over their remarks, it is unlawful for a school district to say you can have this viewpoint but not that viewpoint. But the problem with that statement is students don't have control over their remarks even under the new policy. The administrators have to sign off on it. Therefore, it is school speech.
Yeah.
So if this kid wanted to preach again and the school district said no, First Liberty's saying, well, then we're going to sue you about it.
Yeah, it's a little snake eating its own tail, isn't it?
But
like the
new policy
they got it right, and then they circled all the way back around to fucking themselves over.
This is why you don't listen to conservative legal groups, because they don't know the law. They don't care about the law. They're interested in promoting Christianity, and they lose every time.
Right.
So it's just dumb on their end. Do you want a happier story?
Sure.
Okay. Wait for it.
Okay, I'll just be here.
I was so excited to share this.
Oh.
Okay, so there's a gospel singer, Tamala Mann, and her husband, David Mann, and they just produced an album for Christians to play while they're having sex.
Okay, I did hear about this. What are they doing?
They want you to enjoy intimacy without tasteless lyrics, because when you're having sex, the last thing you want to hear is someone singing about sex.
I was really hoping you were going to quote some raunchy song, and I was just living for that moment.
I was looking for lyrics. They don't have any. They basically are not talking about anything sexy.
What is it?
It's music. Like, it's about love and making
So wait,
love.
what, wait.
Yeah.
What delineates a general love song from a Christian person versus like a fucking love song?
I think here's what they quoted. The singer's husband joked that people are probably listening to R. Kelly or Ron Isley when trying to get romantic.
Who the fuck is Ron Isley?
Old school, maybe.
I'm gonna look it up.
But really,
also,
if you're playing R. Kelly, you got other issues. Here's the best quote.
Ron Isley?
Ron Isley. We wanted to make music that people can have those intimate moments with and not listen and be like, girl, let me slap you, bump you, pop you, all of that
I'm extremely
stuff.
uncomfortable. I want to be very clear about that. I hate this.
Are you uncomfortable with me reading that?
Yes, so uncomfortable. Do you notice how I made eye contact with you in 30 seconds?
Yes. By the way, just to be clear, even if you're like a married Christian couple who's been together for a long time, it is entirely possible you still want to like slap, bump, and pop.
Stop it.
You're welcome.
Literally never do that.
Not everyone just wants to like make sweet, sweet love all the time. I'm just saying that's not how it works, and I don't get why they don't seem to realize that.
Okay, I'm reading through Ron Isley's discography, and I have no idea who this cat is.
It's because you're white.
I mean, honestly, maybe. He was on an R. Kelly album. Maybe these people only know who R. Kelly is.
By the way, when they quoted it, they put a dash between R and Kelly, which I found amusing.
Cool, guys.
That is totally
really
the
get
right
it.
grammatical approach to it.
Oh, God, somebody buy me the CD.
Every time there's like a TV show, there's always a shitty Christian version of the TV show. And every time there's a band, there's like the shitty Christian boy band. And like God's Not Dead is a whatever. There's all the shitty Christian versions of everything cool. And they found a way to do it with sex music.
Is there a law, like, you know, the the one law about like whatever exists, there's a porn version of it, or
like a Rule 40, whatever it was.
I feel like there has to be a rule like whatever that no matter what piece of pop culture exists, there's a worse Christian version of it, or a worse like wholesome.
Yeah, I think
version.
it's just called evangelical Christianity. It's just the low-class version of whatever everyone actually likes.
It makes me I'm so deeply uncomfortable right now. I hate this, actually.
That's why I brought this story
Actually, can we move on?
We can move on.
Thank you.
Here's a totally unrelated story, but it involves priests. So therefore, it had something to do with, I don't know. Gallup asks every year which profession is the most honest and ethical. And pretty much every year down the line, do you know what the number one most honest ethical profession? Or people rate it as honest and ethical?
Is it like a clergy member?
No.
No.
We'll get to that.
Is it like a doctor?
You are close. Doctor's number 2 with 67%
Wait, what would number
ranking
one?
them
a teacher.
high or very high. Teachers are in 4th. Only 60% think they're honest and ethical. I'm in love with this
game.
I know. It's the worst Family Feud. Go on. Keep going.
Boring one.
Keep going.
For sure.
Funeral directors, 39%.
Really? I thought funeral directors were kind of famously
corrupt or something, trying to sell you stuff in your time of need.
Okay, wait. What would number 1 be?
More people dislike them than like
okay.
them.
Okay, you're really interrupting my train of thought. Can I have some moment of silence on this podcast?
Jesus.
So I can think about what's the number 1?
Who is ethical?
So it wouldn't be a politician, but it would probably be somebody.
It's totally not politician.
Yeah, I know. I'm thinking through it, so I'm not.
Members
so there's
of
not
Congress,
fucking dead air on this podcast.
Members of Congress, lowest on the list with 8%.
Dedoy.
Yeah.
Okay. So not like a preschool teacher or
you're
like
not
going to
like the answer because you said doctor.
Yeah.
The answer is nurses. In the same realm.
Yeah.
Nurses win.
Sure.
Clergy is at 37%.
37%
said
place.
No, 37% say clergy are honest or ethical. It's the lowest number in Gallup's history for clergy.
I wonder why.
I know, right? Why is that? They were at 50% as recently as 2012. But it has clearly gone down since then.
You said to 37?
37%.
Wow.
The highest ever was 67%. That was in 1985. But yeah, when you have the sex abuse scandals or child rape scandals in the Catholic Church, you have everything affiliated with Donald Trump and the evangelical right. It's like, religious leaders can't really be trusted to be honest or ethical or anything. And I imagine it's only going to go down.
Just, can you check on there, where do atheist podcasters fall?
We are somewhere below car salesmen, telemarketers, ad reps, lawyers.
Yeah, I was going to say lawyers can't be doing great.
Though it is kind of sad to see that just below clergy is journalists.
Oh, no!
Ouch.
Oh,
man.
Journalists. Sorry, guys.
But the question, here's what I'm dying to I wish I could know the answer to this. 37% is the lowest clergy have ever received in terms of high and super and like very high rankings. How low does that, where do they bottom out?
Well, how many, I would say...
Because way more people than this are religious.
Well, yeah, but how many people... I guess more people than that go to... I was going to say, it would probably be the number of people who attend church regularly.
I think it's way higher than 37%, though. Maybe not regularly. I don't know what the number is that attend regularly, but...
But yeah, you're
like
right. That is
are religious.
Shockingly low.
It is. It's so low.
And I wonder... Okay, here's my question. So,
by the way, also interesting is the people who said they trust clergy at a very high level is only 8%. The rest of that 37% came from people who just ranked them high, like the second one on the list.
So here's my question. I wonder if it is like, I heard a statistic, and I'm kind of pulling it out of my ass, but even though Congress has, as a whole, a really low approval rating, people tend to like their congressperson. That's
very true.
So I wonder if it's a similar thing where, like, I like my priest, I like my pastor, but them as a chunk are not to be trusted. Yeah, that would be my guess.
That's probably very true. I like my church. I like my pastor. I like my priest.
They're
the rest of them that give us
a
bad name, obviously. But when everyone says that, it's a problem. So, yeah, there you go.
I've got something.
Please.
So there is the First Presbyterian Church of Miami. It's the oldest organized congregation in the city. And it just got hit with a $7.1 million tax bill from the Miami-Dade property appraiser.
A church got taxed like hardcore.
Yeah. So because this... Okay, so essentially, I'm sure... people who aren't American... Do you want to explain why churches don't get taxed?
Yeah, I mean, the same reason they don't get taxed is the same reason nonprofits don't get taxed in general. You're providing a service to people. The reward for that is we won't tax you.
Right.
The problem, obviously, is when some of these nonprofits, including churches, want to play politics. That's the whole Johnson Amendment issue we've talked about many times. And in this church's particular case, the reason they were taxed is because basically the Miami-Dade property appraiser in Florida said, you're not doing nonprofit work.
Exactly. And so a lot of these, when we talk about taxing churches, when we talk about taxing churches, it often comes, like, what I have in mind generally is property tax, right? Like, the ground that you're sitting on is being used, is a portion of the city or the state or whatever, and should be taxed, just like we all pay tax on our property. So especially when for me, the killer is always on the Magnificent Mile in Chicago, on kind of like the northwest end. There's like a huge church right on the Magnificent Mile. I can't think of it. I've walked by it a gajillion times. And all I can think about is like, this is some of the most expensive real estate in the country. Yeah. And like these people, anyway.
And they're not paying
taxes on it. Anyway, all that's to say. So this property appraiser claims that the church has leased a portion of church grounds for a for-profit school and food trucks, which violates its religious exemption status. So like they're straight up and down making money. It's not like they're not playing by the rules in terms of they're trying to get into politics. They are like, this is a profit center, which for a nonprofit strikes a problem.
And by the way, the Florida law in question says that, look, the only things you're allowed to say are nonprofit are the parts of your property you're actually using for nonprofit work. So if you're letting a for-profit school or you're letting a food truck take over a part of your space, you don't get credit for that part of the space. Right. That's what they were taxed on.
You're making money off it, thereby... You're no longer a nonprofit. That's what profit means.
Right. And of course, guess what the church's response for all this is?
Was it, what? Us? Me? But Jesus, though.
They're saying, nope, this is religious discrimination.
Sure.
They're saying the state's basically acting in a, quote, arbitrary, capricious, discriminatory manner.
Florida has a history of that.
They're like, we didn't do anything wrong. And by the way, a lawyer who has actually represented a lot of religious buildings, churches, mosques, synagogues. He spoke to the Miami Herald, and he basically said, this isn't religious discrimination. Quote, to me, it sounds like you've got a church that is leasing out a school. They're making money and not paying what they owe. Yeah. And by the way, the whole church property is assessed at $66 million. The fact that this little section of it is being taxed for the right reasons, that is not a big it's not a big deal.
Yeah, and Zemo, the guy who you just quoted, he called it, it's the ultimate nightmare scenario, which I think is amazing. And he specifically said it's not religious discrimination because the county isn't acting in a mean or arbitrary way. Like,
right. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Right. And again, that's a different issue. Usually when we talk about churches, why they should be taxed, it's because they're promoting political candidates and telling you how to vote, and that violates the rules of nonprofits that the government sets. This is a totally different one where they're just giving space to a money-making business and then trying to say, oh, don't tax us for that.
It's so transparent.
So good. It's nice to see a church actually have to pay for something.
Yeah, and hopefully it sets some kind of ball rolling. That'd be nice to see. If nothing else, just to make churches are staying honest. Like, if we still keep wanting not tax churches, which I don't necessarily think is the best way to run our country.
Well, it wouldn't be. It would be taxing all nonprofits, and that would be a mistake for nonprofits everywhere.
But so let's make sure people are playing by the rules is all I think.
I don't think we say this often. Nice work, Florida.
They're going to hang their hat on this one for a while.
Yeah. I'm good. That's enough for this
I'm good, too.
week.
We have listener mail, though.
Do we?
We
Go
do.
for it.
So this is from Mark C. A bunch of years ago, you put out a post asking what podcasts people listen to. I assume that was you because
I assume I did this
I
a
don't
long
put out
time ago.
posts. As I've been splitting and stacking and hauling a lot of firewood lately, which, by the way, I used to do that when I lived in Montana. It's the best fucking workout, and it's so cathartic.
I don't understand your people.
Chopping wood, like, you know what an axe is? God damn it.
Mm-hmm.
I've been running out of podcasts. Would love recommendations from you and Jessica. Oh, he wrote this to you. From you and Jessica and your contributors and readers. So
which podcasts, and I'm assuming let's stick to atheist ones.
Oh, God damn it, Hammond. That takes away all of my fun.
I know. Which atheist podcasts do people listen to? I saw the email and I'm like, I don't know what I would even recommend. Not because there are none, but because there's a whole bunch of them. And I don't think here's a list of 3 that are better than all the other ones.
Right. I mean, I really think it just comes down to what sort of is the kind of thing you want to listen to.
Yeah.
So Godless Bitches is always something I would recommend. Because I mean, some shows do kind of what we do, which is a sort of look at current events in the news in the lens of we do atheism. Godless Bitches is more, I guess, we're atheist, feminism, LGBTQ rights. They do a similar thing, but a little more feminism, and we're a little more religious. I mean, you always have to recommend the Thinking Atheist, right? Seth Andrews, that was one of the first podcasts I listened to. I was really... I actually have... They're not specifically atheist related, but I'm going to sneak them in anyway because they're in the neighborhood. I've been listening to a podcast called Criminal. Phoebe Judge hosts it, and essentially they're generally between 20 minutes and a half hour, and it just explores one example of crime. And it's all kinds of different things. And the one I listened to one today, it's episode 70. It's called The Procedure. And it was fascinating. It was about how members of the Catholic Church helped run an underground abortion ring, I guess isn't the word, but abortion network is the word I was looking for, in the 70s, and how many people they helped and how good a job they did. And it was incredible. I literally just was listening to it today, so I'd recommend that. Also, another one that I think is similar to, not similar, but people would find interesting who like this podcast is The Dollop, which I've definitely recommended before. One of their first episodes, either their first or second, is about purity culture or purity balls specifically. And it's all just weird little chunks of American history, and they do a few that are pretty locked into religious shit that fucked up other things in American history. It's really good. It can be hella depressing. He's gotten into a lot of things. They did one on Wells Fargo. That was hard to listen to. They just did one last week, I think, on the family that owns Fiji water. And hey, guess what? They're fucking monsters. They're very, very, very bad people. So anyway, I would recommend those. Do you have anything else?
I was going to say, I don't really listen to atheist ones because I feel like I do it for a living. So it's I don't need more atheism when I'm driving.
Yeah,
so the stuff I listen to is unrelated to all of that.
For me, I don't like to listen to too many other atheist podcasts because I'm afraid they're too... I don't want to step on their toes, and I would rather just not know what they're doing.
I'm the opposite. I will totally want to know what everyone else is doing. I just don't really listen to them.
Sure.
So I'm not the person to ask for it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're interested in the politics of, when we discuss politics, Pod Save America is my favorite new podcast it's new to me, not new to the world. And it's helped me understand the ins and outs of politics in a way that I never bothered to learn before. So I'd recommend that. Yeah. So
if you have suggestions,
Mark would love your suggestions. Why don't you comment somewhere?
When we post it, or send them to us, and we'll compile a list and we'll put it up with the next episode or something too.
Yep. I guess that's it. Hammond, what are you up to? It's Christmas next week.
It's Christmas next week, so I'm staying at home. It's all good.
It's nice timing for us. We don't have to miss anything.
I know.
No, I know what we can talk about. So I think we're presently recording episode 249.
We are.
Which means our next episode is 250.
Congrats.
Congrats to
Yay,
us.
that's the thing.
Yay. That's a lot of podcasts. We've missed 0 weeks ever.
We have missed 0
which
weeks.
is almost unheard of. That is, I don't know how we did it, but we did somehow. So also next week is our last podcast of the year.
Which means
2018 shit year in review. And so me and my friend Kate are going to sit down and we're going to compile everything that happened over the year, the good, the bad, and Hammett and I are going to drink wine and talk about the year.
I'm not doing any research for that one.
Yeah, that's no pressure. That's fine. But yeah, you doing anything for Christmas? Do you celebrate Christmas, right?
Sure. Yeah, I'm home. We're just not going anywhere. We traveled to visit family recently. We're just kind of chilling out this time.
Yeah.
Good.
I've got my husband's entire family coming over to my house tomorrow.
Have fun with that.
Can't you see how clean it is, Hammett?
I'm same as every week I'm here.
super ready for this. Hosting my folks on Christmas Eve. Hey, I hope everybody has a nice holiday week. I know the holidays can be really rough for a whole lot of people. So whether you have family who you don't get along with, or don't go anywhere or do anything, we're thinking of you, and we thank you for being part of our little community. Holidays can be really rough for a lot of people, so just
I agree
I know a lot of people I know are dreading it. So you're not alone. Reach out to other people. Yeah, be good.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll
Wait. Where can I find you on Twitter? Where can I find you on Twitter?
Right.
We have all this shit we do after every
Twitter,
episode.
I'm at Friendly Atheist. Podcast Patreon is Friendly Atheist. Patreon.com/Friendly Atheist Podcast.
The wheels are coming off,
I
huh?
know.
You can find me on Twitter at Blueberry, BLUEBURAE on Twitter. Again, I'll be in LA. I said that in the weirdest possible way. January 8th, 6:30 p.m. ETA in Highland Park. Shoot me a tweet if you're gonna come, so I know if I should expect anybody or if it's just gonna be me and my friend getting a drink, which is fine. And Merry Christmas, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.